The clock says 9:02 a.m. You are sitting in a meeting room. The chairs are new. The lights are bright. The coffee smells good. Everyone is talking. Your boss is talking. Your co-workers are talking. They talk fast. They laugh fast. They understand each other fast. And you are sitting there, quiet, waiting. You have something to say. You know the answer. You know it very well. Back home, you said this kind of thing every day. Back home, people listened to you. Back home, you were someone. But right now, your mouth is closed. Your hands are a little cold. Your heart is beating faster than normal. And the meeting moves on. Without your voice, without your idea, without you. The door closes. People walk out. Your boss looks at you for 1 second. Just 1 second. Then he looks away. You walk to your desk. You sit down. You look at your computer screen, but you do not see the screen. You are thinking, why did I not speak? I knew the answer. Why did I stay quiet again? This is not the first time. This happened last week. This happened last month. This happens again and again. And every time you go home with the same feeling, heavy, tired, a little smaller than before. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you spoke in a meeting and felt good? When was the last time someone listened to you and nodded? When was the last time you felt like yourself at work? Maybe you remember that moment. Maybe it was a long time ago. Maybe it was in a different country, in a different language, in a different life. Here is a hard truth. Every day you stay quiet is one more day you become invisible. Not because you are not smart, not because you do not work hard, not because you do not have value, but because no one can hear what you do not say. And the world is not waiting. Your co-workers are not waiting. Your boss is not waiting. The meeting rooms keep moving. The promotions keep going to other people. The opportunities keep passing you by. And you keep sitting there, quiet, invisible, frustrated. But today is different. Today, I want to tell you a story. It is a story about a man who lost his voice too. Not because he did not have words, but because the world told him his words did not matter. He was a professional. He was brilliant. But in a new country, in a new language, he was nobody until he decided to take his voice back. His story is not in a self-help book. His story is in history, and his story is also your story. Stay with me today, because by the end of this video, you will have something real. Not just English words, but the courage to use them. Your voice was taken, but you are taking it back. Starting today, starting now. Before we go into the story today, I want to give you something. 5 words, not 5 grammar rules, not 5 pages of notes. Just 5 words. But these 5 words are important. They will help you understand the story better. And maybe they will help you understand yourself better too. Are you ready? Let's begin. Word number 1. Invisible. Say it. Say it with me. Invisible. Invisible means no one can see you. But I'm not talking about a ghost. I am talking about a feeling. You are in the room. Your body is there. But people look through you. They do not really see you. They do not really hear you. Have you ever felt that you are standing right there, but it feels like you do not exist? That feeling has a name. That feeling is called invisible. And many professionals feel this every single day. Not because they are weak, but because no one gave them the tools to be seen. Word number 2. Deserve. Say it slowly. Deserve. Deserve. Deserve means you have the right to something good. Listen to me carefully. You work hard every day. You learn a new language. You leave your country, your family, your comfort. You start again from zero. You deserve respect. You deserve to be heard. You deserve a seat at the table. Not because someone gives it to you, but because you earned it. Remember this word. Deserve. You deserve more than silence. Word number 3. Speak up. Speak up. 2 words, 1 big meaning. Speak up means to use your voice, to say what you think, to not stay quiet when you have something important to say. Speaking up is not easy. I know that, especially in a new language, especially in a new country, especially when you are afraid people will laugh at your accent. But speaking up is not about being perfect. Speaking up is about being present. It is about saying, I am here, I have a voice, and I am using it. Word number 4, underestimate. 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 Underestimate means to think someone is less than they really are. When people underestimate you, they look at your accent and stop listening. They look at your face and make a decision. They think they already know who you are. But here is the secret. Being underestimated is painful. Yes, but it is also power. Because when people underestimate you, they are not ready for what you can do. And that surprise belongs to you. Word number 5. Reclaim. 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 Reclaim means to take something back that belongs to you. Your voice belongs to you. Your confidence belongs to you. Your professional identity belongs to you. No new country can take that. No language barrier can take that. No meeting room full of fast talkers can take that. You can reclaim it. Step by step, word by word, day by day. So let us review our 5 words together. Invisible, that feeling of not being seen. Deserve, the right to something good. Speak up, to use your voice with courage. Underestimate, to see someone as less than they are. Reclaim, to take back what is yours. Keep these words in your heart today, not just in your notebook, in your heart. Because in the story you're about to hear, you will see all 5 of these words come alive. In one man, in one extraordinary life, in one journey from invisible to unforgettable. Are you ready? Let's go. Let me tell you about a man named Albert. Not Albert from your neighborhood. Not Albert from a movie. Albert Einstein. Yes, that Albert. But I am not going to tell you the story you already know. I am not going to talk about E equals mc squared. I am not going to talk about the Nobel Prize. I am not going to talk about the genius. I am going to tell you about the immigrant. The man who arrived in America with 2 suitcases. The man who could not order coffee without pointing at the cup. The man who sat in meetings and understood only half the words. That Albert. The year was 1933. Albert Einstein was 54 years old. He was not a young man anymore. His hair was already white. His face had lines from years of thinking on working. Back in Germany, he was everything. He had a big office at a famous university in Berlin. When he walked into a room, people stood up. When he spoke, professors took notes. When he published a paper, the whole world talked about it. He had a name. He had a voice. He had a place. But in 1933, everything changed. The political situation in Germany became very dangerous. A new government came to power, and that government hated people like Albert. So Albert had to leave. He packed 2 suitcases. He said goodbye to his home, his city, his language, and he got on a boat. Destination: Princeton, New Jersey, United States of America. On that boat, Albert looked at the water for a long time. He was not afraid of starting again. He was a scientist. He was used to hard problems. But he had one dream, one simple, honest dream. He wanted to continue his work. He wanted to think, to write, to discover. He wanted to contribute something real to the world. That was all. Not a big house in New Jersey. Just the chance to keep doing the work he loved. In whatever country, in whatever language. He thought, I have my mind, I have my ideas. That is enough to start. He believed that, fully, with his whole heart. When the boat arrived in New York Harbor, Albert stood on the deck and looked at the city. Tall buildings, busy streets, millions of people moving fast. He did not know most of their words yet. He did not know their jokes. He did not know their culture. But he knew one thing. He knew he had something valuable inside him. Something that no border could stop. Something that no language could take away. He just needed the chance to show it. He just needed someone to listen. So Albert Einstein, one of the greatest minds in human history, arrived in America as an immigrant. Tired, hopeful, a little scared, and full of things he wanted to say. Just like you. Maybe your name is not Albert Einstein. Maybe you did not win a Nobel Prize. But you also arrived somewhere new with something valuable inside you. You also have ideas, skills, experience, knowledge. You also have things you want to say. And you also just need someone to listen. Remember that as we continue his story. Because what happened next to Albert is something no history book ever tells you. Princeton, New Jersey, October 1933. Albert Einstein walked into his new office at the Institute for Advanced Study. The room was nice. Big windows, a wooden desk, good light. A young assistant named David opened the door for him and said something quickly in English. Albert smiled and nodded, but he did not understand the full sentence. He caught 2 words, maybe 3. The rest disappeared into the air like smoke. He sat down at his new desk. He looked at the window. Outside, students were walking fast, talking fast, laughing fast. And Albert felt something strange. For the first time in many years, he felt small. The first staff meeting came 3 days later. Albert walked in and found a long table. 12 professors were already sitting down. All Americans, all confident, all talking. The meeting started. Words came fast. Jokes came fast. References came fast. Albert understood the topic. Of course he did. This was his field. He had studied this for 30 years. But the language moved too quickly for him. By the time he translated one sentence in his head, 3 more sentences had already passed. He opened his mouth once. He started to say something important, but his words came out slow. His sentence structure was a little different. His accent was thick and heavy. One younger professor looked at him, not with respect, not with curiosity, with patience. The kind of patience you give to a child who is still learning to read. Albert stopped talking. He looked down at his notes, and he stayed quiet for the rest of the meeting. After the meeting, he walked back to his office alone. He sat down. He did not open his notebook. He did not pick up his pen. He just sat there. And for the first time since arriving in America, a dark thought entered his mind. Maybe I am too old for this. Maybe my best days are behind me. Maybe in this country, in this language, I am not who I used to be. The weeks passed. Albert tried to improve his English. He read newspapers every morning. He listened carefully to conversations. He practiced sentences before going to sleep. But progress was slow. So slow. And the problem was not just the language. The problem was also the culture. In Germany, academic meetings were formal. People spoke one at a time. People listened carefully before responding. In America, meetings were different. People interrupted each other. People spoke loudly to show confidence. People made quick jokes to build connection. Albert did not know these rules. No one told him these rules. He had to discover them by watching. And watching took time he felt he did not have. At home in the evening, his wife Elsa would ask him, "How was your day, Albert?" He would look at her and say, "I spoke today, but no one really heard me." Elsa would nod slowly. She understood. She was an immigrant too. They would sit together at the kitchen table, two brilliant people, eating soup in silence, in a country that did not yet know their full value. Here is what I want you to notice. Albert Einstein was not struggling because he was not smart enough. He was not struggling because he did not work hard enough. He was not struggling because he did not belong there. He was struggling because the system was not built for him. The meeting rooms were not built for him. The speed of the conversations was not built for him. The unwritten social rules were not built for him. Does that sound familiar to you? Have you ever sat in a room full of people and felt like the rules of that room were written in a language you never learned? That is not your failure. That is the gap. And gaps can be crossed. Albert was about to find out how. But first things were going to get worse. Much worse. Not every enemy carries a weapon. Some enemies wear nice suits. Some enemies smile at you in the hallway. Some enemies shake your hand and say, "Welcome, Professor Einstein," and then walk away and say something very different to someone else. His name was Richard. Richard was 34 years old. Young, tall, confident. He had a perfect American accent. He spoke fast, thought fast, moved fast. Richard was also a physicist at the Institute. A good one, smart and ambitious. But Richard had a problem. He did not like sharing the spotlight. And when Albert Einstein arrived, the spotlight moved. Visitors came to see Albert. Journalists asked about Albert. The director of the Institute talked about Albert in every public speech. Richard watched all of this. And Richard smiled. But the smile did not reach his eyes. It started with small things. In meetings, when Albert tried to speak, Richard would cut in. Not violently, not rudely, just smoothly, professionally. And building on that point, right, so what we are really saying is, actually, the more current research suggests, always cutting, always redirecting, always making Albert's half-finished sentence disappear into Richard's full, confident paragraph. And the other professors, they followed Richard's energy. Because Richard was fluent. Richard was fast. Richard sounded certain. And in that room, sounding certain was more powerful than being right. Then came the faculty dinner. A formal evening. Nice restaurant. Everyone dressed well. Wine on the table. Soft music in the background. Albert was sitting near the end of the table. Someone asked him a question about his new research. Albert started to answer. His English was careful, slow, thoughtful. He was building his idea word by word, like a man building a bridge one stone at a time. But before he could finish, Richard laughed lightly and said, "I think what Professor Einstein is trying to say is simply this." And then Richard explained Albert's idea in 30 fast, fluent, impressive seconds. The table nodded. People smiled. Someone said, "Ah, yes, of course." Albert looked at his soup. He had not finished his sentence. Someone else had finished it for him. Someone else had taken his idea, dressed it in fluent English, and presented it as a translation. Albert picked up his spoon. He ate his soup quietly, and he said nothing more that evening. But Richard was not the only enemy. There was another one. Closer, quieter, more dangerous. It lived inside Albert himself. Every morning when he woke up, this enemy was already there. Waiting, it whispered things like, "You are 54 years old. Too old to change. Your English will never be good enough. These young Americans are faster than you. Maybe you should just write your ideas down and let someone else present them. Maybe silence is safer." This internal enemy had no name. But you know this enemy. You have met this enemy too. Maybe this morning. Maybe right now. It is the voice that tells you to shrink, to wait, to let someone else take the space that was always meant for you. Some days, Albert believed that voice. He would prepare something to say in a meeting. He would practice the sentences at home. He would walk into the room feeling ready, and then Richard would speak first, loud and fast and smooth, and Albert would sit down quietly and think, maybe next time. Next time, always next time. I want to stop here for one moment. I want to ask you something honest. How many times have you said next time? How many meetings have you left with your best idea still sitting in your throat? Unspoken. How many times has someone like Richard taken your silence and filled it with their own voice? This is not just Albert's story. This is the story of every invisible professional, whoever sat at a table and felt like a guest in a room they deserve to own. But here is what Richard did not know. Here is what that inner enemy did not know. The moment was coming, quietly, slowly, the way all important moments come. And when it arrived, nothing in that room would ever be the same again. It was a Tuesday afternoon in November. The sky outside was grey. The trees had lost most of their leaves. Princeton in November feels quiet, a little lonely. Albert was sitting in his office, not working, just sitting. His notebook was open in front of him, but the page was empty. He had been staring at that empty page for 40 minutes. There was a knock on the door, a soft knock, almost shy. "Come in," Albert said. The door opened slowly. A young man stepped inside. He was maybe 26 years old, thin, glasses, a little nervous. His name was Marcus Webb. He was a doctoral student at the Institute, not famous, not confident like Richard, just a quiet, serious young man who loved physics the way some people love music. Deeply, personally, completely. Marcus held a folder in both hands. "Professor Einstein," he said carefully, "I am sorry to bother you. I have a question about your 1905 paper, the one about special relativity. I have read it 4 times, but there is one part I still do not fully understand." Albert looked at him, not at his folder, at his face, and Albert saw something there that he had not seen in a long time in this country. Genuine curiosity, not competition, not performance, just a real human being with a real question. Albert sat up straight. "Sit down," he said. "Show me which part." Marcus opened his folder. He pointed to a paragraph. He explained his confusion slowly and carefully, and Albert began to answer. Not in perfect English, not in fast, impressive sentences, in his own way, slowly, with long pauses, sometimes stopping to find the right word, sometimes drawing a small diagram on a piece of paper, sometimes using his hands to show a concept when the English word escaped him. Marcus did not interrupt. Marcus did not finish Albert's sentences. Marcus did not look at his watch. He just listened, completely, patiently, hungrily. And something happened in that office on that grey November afternoon. Albert Einstein remembered who he was. They talked for 2 hours. When Marcus finally stood up to leave, his eyes were bright. "Professor Einstein," he said quietly, "I have learned more in these 2 hours than in my last 6 months of reading." Albert looked at him for a moment. Then he said something simple, something that would change both of their lives. He said, "Marcus, can I ask you something?" When I explained the concept, today was my English clear enough for you to understand? Marcus looked surprised by the question. He thought for a moment. Then he said, "Professor, honestly, your English is not always perfect, but your thinking is always perfectly clear. And thinking is what matters." Albert was quiet for a long time. He looked out the window at the grey November sky. And something shifted inside him, very quietly, like a key turning in a lock. That night, Albert sat at his kitchen table. Elsa brought him tea. He did not drink it right away. He was thinking about what Marcus had said. Your thinking is always perfectly clear. He had been trying so hard to sound American, so hard to speak fast, so hard to use the right idioms, the right jokes, the right rhythm. He had been trying to speak like Richard, but Marcus did not need him to speak like Richard. Marcus needed him to think like Einstein, and thinking like Einstein that he could do, in any language, in any room, in any country in the world. This was the moment, not a big dramatic moment. No music, no applause, just a man, a cup of tea, and one sentence from a young student that cut through months of self-doubt, like a light through fog. The secret was not better grammar. The secret was not a perfect accent. The secret was not speaking faster or louder or more like everyone else in the room. The secret was this: stop trying to sound like them. Start thinking like you. Because your thinking is the one thing. No new country, no new language, no reader in a nice suit can ever take from you. Your mind is your voice. And your voice was never really gone. It was just waiting. Waiting for one person to listen. Waiting for you to believe it was worth saying out loud. Marcus Webb never became famous. History does not remember his name. But on a grey Tuesday in November 1933, a quiet young man with a folder and a real question gave one of the greatest minds in history exactly what he needed most. Not advice, not correction, not fluent, impressive English. Just listening. Real, patient, genuine listening. Sometimes that is all it takes to bring someone's voice back. Remember that. The next morning, Albert woke up early, earlier than usual. He made his own coffee. He sat at the kitchen table alone. Elsa was still sleeping. The house was quiet. The street outside was quiet. Everything was quiet. But inside Albert's mind, something was moving. He took out a small notebook. Not his physics notebook. A different one. Smaller, older. He opened it to a clean page. And he wrote 3 words at the top. Think, then speak. He looked at those 3 words for a long time. Then he closed the notebook, put it in his jacket pocket, and walked to the institute. That day there was a small seminar, 8 professors around a table. A younger researcher was presenting his work. Albert sat near the window, same seat as always, quiet, watching. The presenter finished. The room opened for questions. Richard spoke first. Of course, a long, impressive, fast question. Full of technical terms. Full of confidence. The presenter nodded and answered. Then silence. Albert looked down at his notebook in his pocket. He did not take it out, but he felt it there. Think, then speak. He had a question. A real question. Not a performance, not a competition. A genuine question about a gap he saw in the presenter's methodology. He took a slow breath, and he spoke. His English was not perfect. His sentence was not fast. He stopped once in the middle to find the right word. But his question was precise. It went directly to the center of the problem, like an arrow to a target. The room was quiet for a moment. The presenter looked at Albert, blinked twice, then said slowly, "That is actually a very important question. I did not think about it from that angle." One professor on the left nodded. Slowly, genuinely, Richard looked at his notes. He said nothing. It was a small moment. 30 seconds? Maybe 40. But for Albert, it felt like standing up after a very long time on the ground. He did not stop there. Every day, Albert practiced his secret. Think first, then speak. He stopped trying to match Richard's speed. He stopped apologizing for his pauses. He stopped filling silence with nervous filler words. Instead, he let himself think. Fully, deeply, completely. And then he spoke. Slowly, clearly, with purpose. His English was still imperfect. His accent was still heavy. Sometimes people still waited with that patient look. But now Albert did not shrink from that look. He held it calmly and finished his sentence. But I want to be honest with you. It was not a straight lineup. Some days were still hard. One afternoon in December, Albert prepared a longer comment for a department meeting. He practiced it 3 times at home. He walked in feeling ready. But the meeting moved in a different direction. His comment no longer fit the conversation. He stayed quiet again that day. He walked home in the cold, hands in his pockets, the grey Princeton sky above him. He thought about giving up, not on physics, but on speaking. He thought, maybe I can just write everything down. Maybe my papers can speak for me. Maybe that is enough. He walked past a park. A father was teaching his small daughter to ride a bicycle. She fell, got up, fell again, got up again. The father did not carry her. He just walked beside her. Steady, patient, present. Albert stopped walking. He watched them for a moment. Then he put his hands back in his pockets and continued walking home. That night, he opened his small notebook. He did not read the 3 words he wrote. He wrote something new underneath them. Falling is part of the direction, not the end of it. January came. February came. Albert kept showing up. Every meeting, every seminar, every dinner. He did not transform overnight. He did not suddenly speak like an American. He did not win every room. But he claimed his seat. Every single day. He claimed his seat. He asked his questions. Slowly, imperfectly, honestly. And something interesting began to happen. People began to lean in when Albert started to speak. Not because his English got faster, but because his thinking got clearer. And in a room full of fast voices, one slow, clear voice began to stand out. Not as a weakness, as a signal. When Albert paused before speaking, people in the room began to pause too, because they had learned something without realizing it. When Albert Einstein takes his time to speak, what comes next is worth waiting for. Richard noticed. One afternoon after a seminar, Richard passed Albert in the hallway. He nodded, short, professional, but it was a different nod than before. Not the nod you give to someone you feel sorry for. The nod you give to someone you have started to take seriously. Albert nodded back, said nothing, and kept walking. Some victories do not need words. March 1934. 5 months after Albert Einstein first walked into that meeting room, feeling invisible. The Institute for Advanced Study was hosting a special public lecture. Not a small seminar, not a department meeting, a real lecture. A big hall, 200 seats, journalists, professors, students, people from outside the university too. The topic was Albert's own work, his own ideas, his own discoveries. The director of the institute asked Albert to present. Albert said yes. The night before the lecture, Albert sat at his kitchen table. Elsa sat across from him. He was not practicing fast sentences. He was not trying to memorize impressive phrases. He was just thinking, quietly, deeply. Elsa watched him for a while. Then she asked softly, "Are you nervous, Albert?" He looked up at her. He thought about the question honestly. Then he said, "I was nervous in October. I was nervous in November and December. I was nervous every morning for 5 months." He paused. "But tonight, I am not nervous. Tonight, I just want to think out loud and see if anyone wants to think with me." Elsa smiled. She reached across the table and put her hand on his. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The next morning, Albert walked to the lecture hall. He arrived early. The seats were still empty. He stood at the front of the room and looked at the 200 empty chairs. He did not imagine a perfect performance. He did not imagine Richard sitting in the front row watching him fail. He imagined Marcus, sitting somewhere in that room, folder in his hands, eyes open, ready to listen. He took one slow breath, and he was ready. People began to fill the seats. Professors, students, journalists. The room became warm and full. Albert stepped to the front. No microphone, just his voice. No slides, just a chalkboard behind him. No notes, just his mind. He began to speak, slowly, clearly, with long pauses between his ideas, with a heavy German accent. That made some people in the back lean forward, just to hear better. He drew diagrams on the chalkboard, simple ones. When a word escaped him in English, he sometimes pointed. Sometimes he used a short phrase in German, and then smiled and said, "You understand, yes?" And the room nodded. Yes, they understood, not despite his imperfect English, because of the clarity of his thinking. 45 minutes later, Albert finished. He put down his chalk. He turned to face the room. For 1 second, there was silence. Complete silence. Albert stood there, calm, open, present. And then the room broke open. Not polite applause. Not the careful clapping of people being professionally respectful. Real applause. Loud, warm, rising. People stood up, one by one, then all together. A standing ovation for a 54-year-old immigrant with an imperfect accent and chalk dust on his jacket. In the third row, Marcus Webb was clapping with his whole body. His glasses a little crooked, his face completely open with joy. He caught Albert's eye across the room. Albert nodded at him. One small, quiet nod. "Thank you. You helped me find my way back." Marcus nodded back. He understood. In the back of the room, Richard was also clapping, slowly at first, then with more conviction, because Richard was many things. Competitive, ambitious, difficult, but he was also a scientist. And scientists respect truth when they finally see it clearly. And the truth in that room was clear. Albert Einstein had not learned to speak like an American. He had done something much harder, much more rare, much more powerful. He had taught an American room to listen like him. That evening, Albert walked home alone. The Princeton streets were quiet. The air was cold and clean. The stars were out. He did not feel like a genius. He did not feel like a celebrity. He felt like himself. For the first time since arriving in America, he felt completely honestly, fully like himself. He stopped walking for a moment. He looked up at the stars. He thought about Germany, about the office he left behind, about the language he missed, about the voice he thought he had lost. And he understood something, standing there on that quiet Princeton street, under those cold March stars. His voice was never taken. It was always there, inside his thinking, inside his ideas, inside the way his mind moved through a problem like water, finding its way through stone. No country could take that. No language barrier could take that. No Richard in a nice suit could take that. He just needed 5 months. And one student with a genuine question and the courage to keep showing up, even when showing up was painful. He looked up at the stars one more moment. Then he put his hands in his pockets and walked home to have dinner with Elsa. Some victories are quiet like that. The best ones usually are. Albert Einstein lived in Princeton for the rest of his life. He never lost his German accent. His English was never perfect. He still paused in the middle of sentences to find the right word. But his voice became one of the most recognized voices in the entire world. Not because he learned to sound American, but because he never stopped sounding like himself. Years later, a journalist asked him, "Professor Einstein, what was the hardest challenge of your life in America?" Albert thought about the question. He did not answer right away. He never answered right away. Then he said, "The hardest challenge was not the language. The hardest challenge was the moment I almost believed that my voice did not belong in the room." The journalist wrote that down. Albert looked out the window and added quietly, "Almost, but not quite." "So what does this mean for you?" "Let me tell you what I see. I see someone who came to this country with a full life already lived. Skills, experience, knowledge, years of hard work, years of solving real problems, years of being somebody. And then one day, you walked into a room where none of that was visible, where people heard your accent before they heard your idea, where meetings moved too fast for your thoughts to land, where someone like Richard was always a little louder, a little faster, a little more comfortable in the language of that room. And slowly, without even noticing, you started to make yourself smaller. You stopped finishing your sentences. You stopped raising your hand. You stopped believing that what you had to say was worth the effort of saying it. That is the real loss, not the language, the belief. But here is what Albert showed us. The voice does not disappear. It waits. It waits for one person to listen. It waits for one small moment of clarity. It waits for you to stop trying to sound like everyone else and start thinking like yourself again. Your accent is not your weakness. Your pause is not your weakness. Your different way of building a sentence is not your weakness. Your thinking is your power. Your experience is your power. Your ability to see problems from an angle that no one born here has ever had to see from. That is not a disadvantage. That is a gift. A rare, hard-earned, irreplaceable gift. And I want to tell you one more thing. Albert Einstein did not reclaim his voice alone. He had Elsa at the kitchen table. He had Marcus with a folder and a real question. He had the small notebook in his jacket pocket. He had 5 months of showing up, even when showing up was painful. You do not have to do this alone either. That is why this channel exists. That is why we read these stories together. That is why every week we sit with a new voice, a new journey, a new proof that the invisible professional is never truly invisible. Just waiting to be heard. Next week, I want to tell you about another person. Her name was Sophia. She came to America from Eastern Europe with a medical degree, 20 years of experience as a senior doctor, and perfect knowledge of her field. But in America, her degree was not recognized. Her experience was not counted. Her title was gone. She started again at the bottom. As a medical assistant, taking orders from doctors 20 years younger than her. Sophia's story is harder than Albert's in some ways, and more powerful in others. Because Sophia did not just reclaim her voice, she reclaimed her entire identity. And the way she did it will change how you see your own situation completely. But that is a story for next week. For now, I want you to sit with Albert's story for a moment. Not the famous Albert, Not the Nobel Prize Albert. The Albert who sat in a meeting and stayed quiet. The Albert who ate soup in silence with Elsa at the kitchen table. The Albert who almost believed his voice did not belong in the room. Almost. Because almost is not the end. Almost is where the real story begins. And your story. Your story is just beginning too? I know it does not feel that way sometimes. I know some mornings feel heavy. I know some meeting rooms still feel impossible. I know the silence after you speak can still feel like the longest silence in the world. But you are still here. You are still showing up. You are still trying. And that means your voice is still alive, still waiting, still yours. Go find it. One word at a time, one meeting at a time, one day at a time. You are not invisible. Let me step out of the story for a moment. Just you and me now. No Albert, no Richard, no Marcus. Just this moment. You and your screen. And something I want to say directly to you. I have told you Albert's story. But I want to be honest. I did not tell you that story to impress you with history. I told you that story because I have met you before. Not you specifically, but someone exactly like you. Someone who came to this country with a full life already lived. Someone who knew things. Someone who was somebody. And someone who sat in a meeting room one day and felt the terrible weight of being unseen. I know that weight. Many people in this community know that weight. So let me give you 3 things today. Not grammar rules. Not vocabulary lists. 3 truths? The kind that stay with you long after you close this video. Truth number 1. People do not dismiss your accent. They dismiss your silence. Read that again. People do not dismiss your accent. They dismiss your silence. When you stay quiet, you give the room permission to forget you are there. When you speak even slowly, even imperfectly, even with the wrong word, sometimes you exist. You take up space. You become real to the people around you. Albert's accent never disappeared, but his silence did. And that made all the difference. So the next time you sit in a meeting and you have something to say it. Not perfectly. Not quickly, just honestly. Your imperfect sentence is 1,000 times more powerful than your perfect silence. Truth number 2, you are not starting from 0. You are starting from experience. This is important. Please hear this. When people say, you have to start over here, they are talking about paperwork, about credentials, about titles. They are not talking about who you are. Your years of experience did not disappear when you crossed the border. Your problem-solving skills did not disappear. Your ability to read a room, to manage pressure, to find creative solutions, none of that disappeared. It is all still inside you, waiting to be seen. Albert did not become brilliant in America. He arrived brilliant. America just needed time to learn how to see it. And the people around you need time to see you too. Give them that time. But do not shrink while you wait. Stand in your full height every single day, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Truth number 3, your difference is your advantage, but only if you own it. This is the hardest truth, and the most important one. Every room you walk into, you bring something that nobody else in that room has. You have lived in 2 worlds. You have thought in 2 languages. You have solved problems under pressures that most people in that room have never experienced. That is not a weakness to apologize for. That is a perspective to lead with. The problem is not that you are different. The problem is that you have been taught to be embarrassed about your difference, to hide your accent, to over-explain your background, to work twice as hard just to be seen as equal. Stop apologizing for the journey that made you who you are. Your story is not a liability. Your story is your credential. Own it. Speak from it. Lead with it. Because in a room full of people who all grew up the same way, thought the same way, lived the same way, you are the one who sees differently. And seeing differently is exactly what the world needs more of. So here is where we are today. Albert Einstein walked into America feeling invisible. He almost let that invisibility become permanent. But he found his way back, not by becoming someone else, by going deeper into himself, by trusting his thinking more than he feared his accent, by showing up one day at a time until the room learned to make space for him. And it will make space for you too. Not because you demand it loudly, but because you show up quietly, consistently, and completely as yourself. That is the work. It is not easy work, but it is the most important work you will ever do. Because on the other side of that work is not just a better job or a better salary or a better title. On the other side of that work is you, the full version of you, the version that existed before the border, before the accent became a problem, before the meeting rooms made you small. That version of you is still there. I promise. Go find it. Before we close today, I want to give you something real to do. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, right now, while this feeling is still alive in you, while Albert's story is still fresh, while those 3 truths are still warm inside your chest. This is the moment. Do not let it pass. Here is your challenge for today. It is small, but small is how everything real begins. I want you to write 1 sentence, just one, as in English. A sentence that describes something you do better than most people around you. Not a perfect sentence. Not an impressive sentence. An honest one. Maybe it sounds like this. I solve problems under pressure better than anyone I know. Or this. I understand people from different cultures in a way most people here cannot. Or simply this. I am still here, and that means I am stronger than I give myself credit for. Write your sentence, then read it out loud. 3 times. Not in your head. Out loud. With your actual voice. In your actual accent. In your actual English. Because that sentence spoken out loud in your real voice is the beginning of reclaiming everything that was taken from you. Now, I have a question for the community. Fill in the blank with me. Write your answer in the comments below. I am not invisible. I blank my place here. Maybe you write, I am not invisible. My place here. Maybe you write, I am not invisible. I am building my place here. Maybe you write, I am not invisible. I am fighting for my place here. There is no wrong answer. Only your answer. Only your truth. Write it below. Because when you write it, you make it real. And when others read it, you remind them that they are not alone. That is how this community works. We reclaim our voices together. And if this video gave you something today, if Albert's story stayed with you, if one of those 3 truths landed somewhere deep, if you feel even 1% more ready to speak in that meeting room tomorrow, then please hit subscribe. Not for me, for the next version of yourself. The one who shows up next week, and the week after, and the week after that. Because every week on this channel, we sit together with a new story, a new voice, a new proof that you belong here, and you deserve to be here for every single one of them. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and I will see you next week with Sophia's story. A woman who lost everything except the one thing no one could ever take. Her mind, her courage, her voice. Just like you. We are at the end now. The story is told. The lessons are given. The challenge is in your hands. But before you go, I want to sit with you for just one more moment. Just one. I do not know your full story. I do not know what country you left. I do not know what title you had before. I do not know how many mornings you have woken up feeling heavy. I do not know how many meeting rooms have made you feel small. I do not know how many times and so you have driven home in silence with your best words still sitting unused in your throat. But I know this. You are still here. You watched this video to the end. That means something. That means the part of you that wants to reclaim your voice is stronger than the part of you that wants to give up. Hold on to that. On the hard days especially, hold on to that. So let me leave you with this. Say it with me. Or just listen. Let it land somewhere quiet inside you. My voice is not broken. It is just finding its way. My accent is not my weakness. It is my history speaking. I do not need to be perfect to be powerful. I just need to be present. I belong in every room I walk into, not because someone gave me permission, but because I showed up, and I will keep showing up. One word at a time. One day at a time. One meeting at a time. Until the room learns my name. Until the room leans in when I speak. Until the room understands what I have always known. That I was never invisible. I was just waiting for the right moment to be seen. That moment is now. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for trusting this space with your time and your story. Take care of yourself this week. Speak up at least once in a moment that scares you. And remember, your voice was never really taken. It was always yours. It still is. I will see you next week.